Be strong.
Welcome back to our channel, the channel for the stories about gay stories and notable gays in the world. Today, we tell a different story to normal, a life of a gay in ancient Rome. Marriages throughout the antique Roman culture seemed extremely distinct from the manner in which we imagine about them nowadays. Getting married seemed more opportunistic at that time than it is now. The Romans of the past did not perceive sexuality or sexual orientation in the same way we as humans understand today. Today, people are not labeled as homo, bi, or heterosexual, instead of focusing concerns who was engaging in the sexuality. The ancient Romans were concerned with controlling the dynamic in the relationship. In a normal sexuality, the male party was the one who provides and the female was the person who receives. Such an arrangement was seen as implementing the male in a place of dominance because the woman was bowing down to him. Nevertheless, in a partnership between two males, one of the males had the position of the recipient in order for them to assume one of the more feminine man of the subservient role. One of the most frequent and readily embraced sexual partnerships between the two males was known as Pitorasti. The story involved a connection involving an older man known to himself as the Arates, as well as an adolescent boy identified as an Orominus. It hadn't been simply an illicit sexual connection, it additionally represented a form of mentoring they hadn't seen before. When it pertains to men in power, it turned out to be extremely common for them to be engaged to a male as well as female lovers, and additionally was considered as lying, like how we perceive it right now as well. At a period in which hormonal contraceptives were not available and giving birth and having been the most common cause of death for females, it had been somewhat an aspect of childbirth for an adult male to go to bed with a person who wasn't his wife. Fortunately, it didn't seem to always be the situation, and the situation constantly perplexed the Roman audience when they decided to play a subservient position versus what they witnessed to be a feminine role. Julius Caesar was an excellent illustration of this. Despite the fact that he was one of the wealthiest men on the planet, he preferred to be the one receiving in interactions with other men. This was considered to be the most troubling aspect for Roman residents to consider. He was considered to be the man who turned Rome into an empire, as well as wielded the greatest authority in it across the borders. So why weren't we going to seek his influence in his own room as well? Hadrian the Great. When numerous emperors had partners spanning both males and females, there were some who solely preferred men to sleep with. From 117 CE, Hadrian the Emperor additionally had masculine partners. However, it appears to be that he had little interest with females at all when he wedded to a female for reasons of politics. The majority of historians assumed he and the woman he married had no children together. A number of explanations why historians believe that he never married is that he never completed their marriage to each other. Hadrian composed several sensual poems about his lovers. Although there were certainly many lovers throughout Hadrian's existence, a single lover rose above the others. To take some time, the gorgeous adolescent named Antonius ensured that the youngster obtained an adequate education as well as ensuring the two of them traveled much together following that. However, disaster overtook both of them while they were on their way to Egypt, and the kid perished in the waters of the Nile under an unidentified condition. Around the site of his death, Hadrian constructed and renamed a city for his beloved. He called Antonius's mummified remains back to Rome and had coined struck in his honor. The youngster's visage as well as idolized him, implying that he actually directed Antonius to be revered as a deity across the empire. Emperor Nero. Hadrian appears to be an outlier in terms of the manner in which he handled his loves. In overall, emperors discovered their partners among their royal slaves and kept treating them as though they were slaves. Nero was certainly not an exception, and he had found a minimum of 2 among his male partners and slaves. However, compared to another emperor, Nero compelled the males to get involved in strange marriage ceremonies, including one which he was enslaved to and identified as Pythagoras. In a single instantaneous, Pythagoras turned out to be the groom, and Nero had been the man with the veil. All of the above obviously represented one of the situations in which the people were perplexed regarding the emperor's conduct. He had been the ruler, the one who ruled with authority, and ought not to be playing the male role. It hadn't been his initial occasion that Nero wedded a male. A few decades later, he wedded a woman. Later, he wedded an additional slave boy called Spores, and once again, Nero pleased his fellow slaves by fulfilling the male role they anticipated of him. Nevertheless, his acts had sounded even harsher to our contemporary ears in order to ensure that those around him understood that his behavior was fitting into the dominant manly position. Apparently, of more examples of Nero's brutality against his partners and concubines, although history has put himself in an especially negative light, and it's occasionally difficult to separate the reality from the overstatements. For instance, a single historian from the period stated that Nero was responsible for having the kid castrated. This cannot be true, yet it was popularly reported regarding him after his passing. Emperor Tiberius. Tiberius was regarded as one of the most notorious perpetrators of mistreating his concubines, if you're able to call them that. He's an outstanding instance of a mature individual who favored to have slumber parties with more youthful boys. So, if sexual misconduct towards children annoy you, you might want to reconsider watching the footage now as a result of his drawn-out attraction to children, as well as the particular activities he enjoyed performing with the young voice. He's today regarded as one of the most former empresses' most physically perverted figures. The majority of his deeds occurred away from Rome, so a number of the allegations are bound to be overstated, but many also have the potential to be accurate. Tiberius dedicated most of his existence at his own villas on Greek islands, where he had younger men imported to serve as his home employees as well as to fulfill his libido and sexual appetites. It wasn't only sexual activity that he would expect from his youthful concubines, but there were additionally a variety of heinous things he was willing to have the adolescent boys perform. Things that a horrible Tiberius demanded that a little lad sleep with him. He was also going to compel them to sleep alongside one another in various groups, as he prepared himself to conduct the exact same activities. In overall, the existence of an emperor's masculine lover couldn't have been a more straightforward one. Sure, there were plenty of rewards like as interacting with the globe's most influential person and living. In their opulent sections, the cons much outnumbered the benefits, yet politics in Rome remained constantly shifting, so you and your partner could or might not stay the ruler for a long period. There were also some emperors who had very wicked desires, and there was nobody who was able to prevent these individuals from living them out. Would the writing be worth a read for you? Let us know in the comments below, as well as keep in mind to follow and see the additional bizarre historical films. Thank you very much for watching, and see you next time.
Be strong.